My interest in investigative interviewing actually started when I was an undergraduate psychology student in the UK. My final year dissertation was on interrogative suggestibility, which refers to the extent to which a person accepts and internalizes messages such as leading questions or false information communicated during formal questioning. When I later began conducting research in my home country, Malaysia, it became very clear to me that police interviewing practices were under-researched despite their importance and the serious consequences they can carry. As I engaged more closely with police practitioners, policymakers, as well as human rights agencies, I became more interested in how international standards could be applied in real-world contexts. That gave me the opportunity to collaborate with international experts involved in the development as well as the promotion of the Méndez principles. I would like to give a shout out to Professor Ray Bull, who is well known for his pioneering work on the peace method in the UK. The collaboration with law enforcement has made me appreciate the importance of bridging academia and practice. As researchers, we are often very familiar with the literature and can articulate what should happen in interviews. But practitioners, they operate with legal constraints, organizational cultures, performance pressures, and with limited resources. So through workshops, discussions, and collaborative research with the police, I've seen that many officers genuinely want to do their jobs well and ethically, but they may not always have access to evidence-based training or clear institutional guidance. I think that effective interviewing must be practical, adaptable, and embedded within systems. So it cannot be taught as a set of isolated techniques. I also think that we need to actively address common misconceptions and cognitive biases while trying to embed rights-based and trauma-informed approaches into interviewing practices. One of the most significant gaps, I think, is the lack of systematic and publicly available data on investigative interviewing practices. So this makes it difficult to evaluate effectiveness or to identify best practices at a national level. Reform efforts should be based on data rather than assumptions. Another important thing to bear in mind is the strong influence of organizational hierarchy and cultural norms, particularly in high-power distance contexts like Malaysia. These dynamics can shape how interviews are conducted, how decisions are questioned, and also how open institutions are to change. At the same time, I've seen real openness among officers to learning evidence-based approaches, especially when they are framed as professional skills rather than criticism of existing practices. Many countries in the region are now actively engaging in the professionalization of policing and international collaboration. We have just recently launched the Méndez Asia Pacific Center for Investigative Interviewing, or MAPSI, under the initiative of Méndez, a European Union-funded project. We know that memory is reconstructive, not a perfect recording, and that people can be sensitive to suggestions, pressure, and expectations during interviews. Rapport-based, open-ended questioning supports more accurate and detailed recall, while coercive or leading techniques increase the risk of contamination, compliance, and even false information. The Méndez principles emphasize preparation, neutrality, safeguards. The recommendations reflect what psychology tells us about how people remember events and communicate in high-stress situations. Well, one promising development in my work has actually been my collaboration with the police to enhance investigative interviewing practices with children. I have had the opportunity to speak directly with officers about their real-world experience, as well as the challenges that they face in the field. And that has allowed me to identify a number of context-specific concerns that will require further research and attention. I think what's especially important is that the Méndez principles apply not only to suspects, but also to witnesses and victims, including children. For me, it's about grounding interviewing practices in psychological science and trauma-informed approaches. approaches? Well, I have alluded to this earlier, where I think one of our priorities moving forward is bridging research, practice, and policy more effectively. Researchers need access to real-world data. Policymakers need evidence they can trust. And practitioners need training that is realistic and relevant. Another priority is sustainability. Rather than treating the Méndez principles as one-off initiatives, they need to be embedded into institutional systems such as police training, curricula, as well as performance evaluation. Finally, we should make use of regional collaboration. Centers like the Méndez Asia Pacific Center for Investigative Interviewing can be very useful for sharing knowledge and adapting the principles to different cultural as well as legal contexts.